This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, don't forget to send us your PR Podcast plug. Now, this is a way to promote yourself, right? And I like to joke around that as PR people or as a PR professional, I'm great at promoting my clients and horrible at promoting myself. And I probably have to do a better job of that. But I'm guessing you might be too. And this is a way you can promote yourself. So send us a PR podcast plug about something that you've done outside of your 9 to 5, right? It's not the great client hit that you got. Maybe you wrote a book. Maybe you got a cool YouTube channel. Maybe you got a great TikTok, or you have a, cooking channel, whatever it is, whatever that thing you do outside the 9 to 5. We want to love on you a little bit. So send us a note on our social media at the PR Podcast. Send us a quickie note and let us know something cool that you've done. We'll shout you out at the top of an upcoming episode. Now, on with our show today, we got a local guest. Scott Gordon is president and co-founder of Core IR, located on Long Island, where I am, and responsible for developing and managing client corporate communication strategy. He also heads up Core PR, wearing dual hats, guiding his clients on good business and good communications decisions. Prior to co-founding Core IR, Scott served as head of global markets trading for IMS, which is a prolific global macro hedge fund, and then as head of sales and marketing for a predictive modeling software company. Scott, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Thank you so much, Jody. Great to be here.
So tell us, Core IR, Core PR. IR standing for Investor Relations, PR for Public Relations. How do these two come together? What do you guys do for your clients?
Sure. So Core IR was the original effort that we started, my partner and I. And I came in to assist in helping public companies to frame their value theses and investment theses to the institutional and retail investing public. So that effort, my partner worked with and works with investor engagement activities, capital markets advisory activities, assisting companies evaluating capital formation strategies and things of that nature. And coordinated and integrated communications was part and parcel of that process. And so what was started initially between us was my partner taking on the role of helping our companies with roadshows, and I handled all the communications. That was corporate presentations, tear sheets, scripts for earnings and annual reports and things of that nature. And so Core PR kind of grew organically out of that effort, where we found that there was really a gap in the market with public companies working with a public relation agency that understood investor relations and the needs and the very specific requirements that they had in addressing communications from a public company perspective. So it really translated well in that integrated approach.
Yeah, it is absolutely a very specific skill set when you're dealing with investor relations and all kinds of financial scrutiny that goes on in the financial world. I've touched it a little bit, but you are deep down in the trenches with it. And my old boss, Howard Rubenstein, used to talk about how good press comes from good actions. So how are you counseling your clients to make good decisions, business decisions that translate into good communications? And I guess maybe, cyclically, how is the good communications then feeding back into the good business decisions?
Sure. So, I get asked often by new clients, how do we know if investor relations is working? And the way we know it's working is demonstrated in their building credibility with their constituents, right? The retail investor, the institutional portfolio manager, the analyst, right? And so the element uh, of how to advise a client in focusing a strategy that demonstrates that execution is really the the core aspect of how to build credibility. So it starts from quarterly reporting, where a company is going to report on the previous quarter's financial and corporate performance. But within that messaging is a framing of expectations for what's coming in the next quarter. And so good communications in investor relations is always focused throughout the ensuing quarter on relating back to that notion of, we told you what we were going to do. Here we are executing according to that set of expectations, and then how that relates to a growth strategy going forward. And then you come to the end of that quarter and you get to that point again where you say, well, we told you what we were going to do. Here's what we did. Here's the variance and why, and here's what we're going to do next. And quarter in, quarter out, establishing that mechanism of continuity in the approach to that messaging is the effectiveness of good communication in IR. If you then take that and move it into the realm of public relations, the notion of public, right, that part of public relations has an implicit trust that you're building with a set of audience members, and it's not just one particular set of folks like consumers or a B2B audience. It's typically a broad-based audience of both the investing public and the consuming public. And so the essential aspect of the integration of those two approaches, right? Establishing credibility and then reaching your audience and with a message that really hits home with them. That is kind of the combination of good business decision and good communications coming together to accomplish those two sets of goals, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense to me, and it leads me to this question then: what do you find, given the different audiences that you're working with, right? It's investors, it might be specialty media, it might be mainstream media. There's all different publics that you're communicating with. Are there different types of communications vehicles or different mediums that you find are most effective to communicate the things you want to be communicating and to the right audiences that you're communicating to?
It's a great question, and the old adages don't really apply anymore. Like an approach to communications in business, in a typical presentation where this would work. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I tell you, and then I tell you what I told you. That doesn't really apply in public relations. The mechanisms today that are for really whatever you're pitching, whether it's a biotech or a pharma or a medical device or food technology or something like an electric bicycle or mobile applications or satellite services or hardware or software, it doesn't really matter. It's the expectation that you're approaching how to satisfy a particular need that becomes the focus of your efforts. And so what we find is that the most effective medium is really the plurality of it, right? It's seeking to gain media coverage in traditional places like national and regional and local broadcast media, for example, but in combination with leveraging digital and social strategies also. So it really has become a fluid combination of approaches to gain a broad-based amplification of your message.
And that goes into, I guess, how you choose to strategically tell that story, right? I mean, it's a, a lot of what we do as communicators is getting I kind of say it sometimes, the right message to the right audience at the right time, right? How do you redefine my definition there for yourself and how you do?
Sure. We developed something at Core PR called Core Advance. Okay. And that is a suite of public relations services and tools that we employ in developing and implementing a public relations campaign. And really, what they amount to are the following: strategic brand elevation, which is the development of custom tailored approaches to enhance perception, visibility, and the value of brands in competitive commercial environments. True voice, positioning pull through, amplified content, um, digital authority. We also form what we call an advisory council, which are practice leaders within our practice coming together to form kind of this brain trust to advise our clients in um, uh, with expert counsel issues and communication and crisis management kind of approaches. And lastly, thought leadership paradigms, where we're actively seeking to create a a thought leadership capability and perception among our audiences by positioning clients to be leaders and experts in their particular set of focuses, right? And so that is really, we were seeking a how to evolve PR to be relevant for today's consumer, and when I say consumer, I mean the consumer of that media, right? Whether it's reporters or folks that are within the realm of coverage and writing articles or blog posts or social posts or followers, and leveraging the ability to reach them with uh, a variety of approaches. That's really what I think PR represents for us, and it blends really well with both public companies and private companies because, frankly, the um, this is really all about understanding your audience and audiences, right? It's the plural of that. The the aspect of elevating your brand and doing it in a unique voice, um, and pulling that positioning through across your mediums. That's really where this gets fun and interesting and dynamic.
Yeah, is there a go-to way, or is there a method or a medium that you like to use over and over? You know, a lot of PR is rinse and repeat, right? I mean,
It is. It
but
is.
is there a way that you like to communicate or that you see that is really effective in your specific scope of, you know, IR? Is there a particular strategy that you like to use that you see as really effective?
I think so. You hear a lot today about content. Content is king, right? And you see a whole industry of influencers that are content creators out there, and so we've got this whole new channel of commerce that's happening where brands are following influencers who are constantly developing content and new types of content. And so within this core advanced approach is something we call amplified content. And that really revolves around the development of original content ranging from not just press releases or written articles, but marketing collateral and uh, um, other content that can be driven through um, social channels and be picked up and run with by other participants uh, who are now in that stream. Influencer campaigns are just one example of this kind of new notion of how media relations gets affected, right, or it put into place. And if this notion of amplified content is really exciting for us because it opens so many different avenues of leveraging what would be in the past, uh, a press release or the message within a press release, and pushing that out to say a group of editors within a particular sector or media channel. Now it's broken wide open by your ability to be able to amplify that content across these different channels and mediums and reach all of these people who have gigantic reach behind them. And so that's really, if you can tap into that, you've really harnessed the power of tomorrow's PR.
And that makes the other shoe drop, which is about measurement, right? Okay, you're
Right.
getting your message out, right? And you look at it from your chair, or I look at it from my chair, and I go, yeah, we're hitting this, we're hitting that, but then how do you communicate that value, that ROI back to the client? And is there specific language or a specific way that you do that in the scope of investor relations and in terms of the client base that you're working with?
Sure. It's a really interesting dynamic, the reporting aspect of PR these days, because there are the traditional means like impressions or other uh, somewhat tangible uh, uh, characteristics of, right, a social campaign or an advertising campaign.
Ad value, yeah, which is my least favorite
Right.
one, right?
Exactly. And I say somewhat tangible
Ridiculous.
because, you can kind of wrap your head around it, but but not. And in that sense, the head of marketing and the head, the CEO of a public company or the CFO are really looking at uh, a finite ability to say, connect this spend with this ROI, right? And relate it back to a board that says, our marketing, advertising, public relations budget for last year was X, Y, and Z, and we accomplished this growth in our brand presence. Well, how do you measure that? I think, and this really speaks to the beauty of the integrated IR, PR part of our practice, the ability to effectively elevate the volume, right? To turn up the volume and the reach of the narrative that you have, that can be quantified in not just impressions, but in audience interaction with your brand, in reverting back to for an IR campaign. How can we track folks coming back into the investor relations website portion of a client, right? And understand that our media pitch relative to something that was picked up, relative to activity within their stock, relative to a visible increase in traffic, right, back to their website. That's something that actually can be monitored and tracked. And so I've spoken about this nexus of ROI and the integrated efforts of IR and PR, and that is really where that ROI can best be contemplated, right? It's in that integrated mix and the actions that spur out of it, right? We had just as an example, we had a client recently that they had a wonderful announcement with a product that they had gone to market with, and now they're coming out with 3 new ones. and um, we pitched the media aspect of that, and uh, and had some really good pickup both in broadcast and in print. And what you saw was an elevated, you saw trading activity that was higher than normal. And I think that spoke to the breadth of the news reaching a broad base of audience members. Um, but it was also uh, in the activity of people driving back into the website, where we could see traffic increasing and where that traffic was going, right? And it was really being driven into the investor relations portion of the website, where folks were really interested in learning more about that corporate development, and pouring through corporate filings and recent press releases. And so you saw this push into really the goal was to gain traction with that information, and you could see it happening. Almost like when a company has an increase in online orders, right? You've seen that commercial where the guys are sitting there and they have 100, and then suddenly they have 100,000, and they look at each other and they're like, okay, this is happening. It's like that in that sense. So it's really fun to see.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you and I have both been at this a long time, right? And
Yeah,
the measurements, for lack of a better word, that PR people typically use, like impressions and ad value and sentiment and all these other things that are in every media monitoring module you've ever bought, right? Are
right.
really kind of like head scratchers. And you know,
Yeah,
and for my dollar, the ad value has only been the only one that's ever made a CEO sit up and go, "Ooh," right? But you and I both know that doesn't track, right?
no,
There's no equivalent. There's so what you're describing, and I've taken this stance recently too, and it's interesting to hear you take a similar one. And to my ears, it's sounding like a similar one. There's no data that we as PR people can necessarily provide independently to
that's right.
prove that this is working or that's working. It's the client that has the data, whether it's the increased sales, the increased stock activity, the
Traffic.
clicks to the
Yeah,
website, right? All those things, right? The uptick in social media, it's the engagement. And I think that is the
absolutely.
key word that we need to hone in on as PR people is we need to focus on, and engagement is different for every client, right?
Right.
You need to work with the client to hone in on what is engagement to you and how do we help to drive that engagement in pursuit of your business goal. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about how that works PR and IR, and
Yeah.
the specific, another one of my least favorite KPI acronyms, right? But that's what
Bane
it
of
boils
my
down to,
existence.
right? Yeah, it's like impressions of, because I've never had to explain what a front page New York Times article means to a client. They know what it means, right?
Right.
I've never had to put
Exactly.
numbers behind that.
Yeah. But
So
I've,
it's
you know,
really interesting to hear you describe.
I work with a lot of clients that aren't getting into that mainstream news. They're not getting covered by the New York Times or the Wall Street
And don't
Journal or
need
the
it. And
Washington
don't
Post.
need it and don't
Well,
want it.
that's right. They're not there yet, right? We work particularly in the small cap arena, and these are emerging companies that are, you know, just clawing their way up. A lot of them are struggling to find break even and get to profitability. And so, their innovations may be groundbreaking, but they don't have the pull that, these bigger cap companies have. And that translates into less broadcast time, less interview time, less. So podcasts like this and podcasts have been wonderful because they've allowed a focused audience to come in and gain, access to content that they're not getting in mainstream media because they're not picking up this stuff. They don't have time. They got too many other things to do with the Magnificent Seven stocks and the other, or these all these bigger companies. And so that's what makes this the implementation of these best practices in this arena really challenging, but really rewarding. And so when you talk about KPIs, I hear that less and less versus, you know, something much simpler, which is how do we know it's working? You know, and it's working because you are getting coverage. It may not be the Washington Post, but not to say that those don't happen. We've got Bloomberg, we've got that, we've got we've got radio, we've got TV, we've got all manner of coverage. But you also have to manage expectations with realism. And a lot of our CEOs come into the practice thinking, I'm hiring a PR firm, they're going to get us into the New York Times. And while I would love to do that, the practical reality is that's going to take some time and some doing, and you got to build those blocks in order to really get there. That's what we do.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Scott. And we absolutely agree on this philosophy. And it's great to hear you describe it, especially in the context of the specific area that you serve, which is an area that I'm not in. So I'm interested to sort of hear you and learn how you do it.
Sure.
Well, this has been a great conversation, Scott. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. We are not going to let you go yet. We are now going to pivot and have some fun. This is the rapid fire question portion of our podcast now. It's where we steal a page from inside the actor's studio. We ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions meant to elicit a simple answer, maybe a laugh or two with your indulgence. Scott, let's begin with rapid fire question number one. What is your favorite news source?
I have to say it's probably, that's such a tough question, but top of my head, Associated Press is, that's my go-to. It's unbiased and it's real. And that's where I go when I need, to know stuff.
I love that. Rapid fire question number two. What's your favorite social media platform?
It's a toss-up between TikTok and, I think it's TikTok, really.
Yeah, it is super entertaining, and you can find just about anything you want to find.
Oh my gosh.
I'm still blown away by the algorithm. I mean,
right.
I went into a little bit of a political, with all of what's going on lately politically, checking out some political posts, and all of a sudden I'm filled with political posts. I'm like, wait a minute, I wanted comedy. Hang on.
It's so funny. I ordered something online, like some gym equipment, and then suddenly I've got the sickest gym equipment ads and things coming up, and I'm just like, how? I wasn't even in the app. It wasn't even connected. I was online on my computer, and now I'm on my phone and I'm seeing all this stuff, and I'm like, what? How is that possible?
Just incredible. Rapid fire question number three: coffee or alcohol?
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, buddy.
Love that answer. Rapid fire question number four: what's your favorite on the run food?
I'm gonna have to go with a Big Mac.
Dig it. All right, cheeseburger. Yeah. And rapid fire question number five, Scott Gordon: what do you want to be after you finish this career?
So I'm a writer in my other life and a musician. So I think I want to be a photojournalist that gets to travel around and do gigs everywhere.
Oh, that sounds like a great second career. That sounds awesome. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, this has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you online.
Sure. You can always find me on LinkedIn. That's probably easiest. You could see my band, lilsomething.com, and that my little musical effort. And of course, you can reach me at Core IR, Scott G at Core IR. That's COREIR.com. Always happy to receive inquiries there.
Wonderful, Scott. Thank you again so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Apple. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.